Hey, fellow freethinkers, and welcome to the second season of Freethought Friday. In just a moment, you're going to hear the first episode of our second season, which is all about the massacre that occurred at Charlie Hebdo's headquarters. This is the French satirical magazine, and of course the following shootings at the Jewish kosher store in Paris. During this episode, Robert got very, very excited about a particular fact that he was trying to relay to you, and he realised actually he had made a factual mistake. So he has asked me just to read a very quick explanation and apology for the mistake, and to let you know that he has learnt, and that we will put in the links necessary to correct that mistake at the end of the podcast. In this episode, I, Robert, got so excited about a point I was making and about how brilliant I sounded making it that I momentarily lost control of the comedic, artistic and improvisational side of my brain, and I embellished the fact. That is to say, I exaggerated, or to put it bluntly, I made something up. It is the bit where I'm talking about France's record of human rights abuses in Algeria. I had read an article that said over 1 million people had been killed during France's occupation of Algeria. That fact is understated. The real figure is higher, as apparently close to 1.5 million people were killed during the War of Independence alone. My brain also dredged up a mention of 15 years ago from some other article. My brain decided to jam those two facts together and come up with a headline-grabbing, eyebrow-raising, France executed 1 million people in Algeria in the last 15 years. As I was saying it, the bit of my consciousness that monitors what I say and do thought, hello, that doesn't sound right. But the moment was gone and the words were now spoken. I'm not proud of it, but as soon as I realised I had done it, I tried to recover by extending the timeline to 25 years. That I thought was sensible. Then I got home and read some more about France and Algeria and realised I was completely wrong. Completely. But like every time that I have been wrong, I am now a little closer to the truth. So even though I feel foolish, I am better informed. I will include some links to France's actual behaviour in Algeria, which does not contain any exaggerations. So that's Robert's statement there. We hope you enjoy this, the first episode of the second season of Freethought Friday.
When you are studying any matter or considering any philosophy, ask yourself only what are the facts and what is the truth that the facts bear out.
Science is more than a body of knowledge. It's a way of thinking, a way of skeptically interrogating the universe. If we are not able to ask skeptical questions, to be skeptical of those in authority, then we're up for grabs.
In all of science, we're looking for a balance between data and theory. You don't have to delude yourself with irony and fairy tales.
The same spiritual fulfillment that people find in religion can be found in science by coming to know, if you will, the mind of God.
The real world, as it actually is not evil. It's remarkable. And the way to understand the physical world is to use science.
There is a new wave of reason sweeping across America, Britain, Europe, Australia, South America, the Middle East and Africa. There is a new wave of reason where superstition had a firm hold. Teach a man to reason and think for a lifetime. Think for a lifetime.
Good evening, Internet. It's Robert Coyle and
Karen O'Flynn here. Hi.
welcome, Freethinkers.
This is episode 201, our second season, our
Yes.
first episode of our second season. So
Yes,
we
well
had
done us.
a short first season, and hopefully a much longer second season. So did you have a nice New Year, Robert?
Yes, had a great New Year. Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of weeks and stuff, and obviously internationally with what's going on, we're going to be talking about that in a bit.
Definitely. Yeah,
That's what tonight's all about, man.
Absolutely. Freedom of expression and free speech, and it's something that in particular affects this show, because this is not a show that, as we said, I think in the very first one, that we could do on radio, even if our 9 fans constituted enough of a of a advertising base, which could possibly support us,
Yes.
we still wouldn't be able to do it because
If we had 9 eccentric billionaire fans,
maybe,
then
yeah,
that would be it. We could sell. If any of you are eccentric billionaires, we'll basically sell you 10 minutes of this podcast time for what? £1 million?
Oh, £1 million.
Million
No,
quid.
absolutely.
Euros.
Yeah,
We'll make it easy.
Yeah,
we'll make
yeah,
it easy.
yeah,
Euros.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Just-
It's dropped against the dollar this week in everything, so it's fine.
So it's practically the same.
Absolutely.
Thing.
It shows how eccentric you are.
Yeah, I mean, definitely with in particular the horrific tragedy at Charlie Hebdo and the follow-up at the, I can't even remember the name of the Jewish store, but it was, I think, a Jewish store, frequented by a number of Jewish patrons in Paris. This has raised a number of questions, and a number of things have happened since then. This, of course, is something that we are as individuals, and I think obviously as hosts of this podcast have talked about many times, and that is the right to be able to express an opinion, whether or not it seems offensive to another person. And in particular, I think this is something that must rile you when people talk about this in a negative way as a comedian.
Yes, I mean, I've very, very... I don't have like a clear single kind of feeling about the whole Charlie Hebdo thing, because I keep on bouncing around a kind of a box, hitting off different kind of things, because on one side, I mean, I put it this way, I believe in the absolute paramount of freedom of speech. So nothing dilutes that.
Nice.
We should be free to do it. I think the issue is that there is now a group of people in this world who so disagree with freedom of speech as to now leave you in a position where you have to ask yourself a question: is this worth being killed over? Before it wasn't. Like, like art was the refuge of people who didn't want to do sports and get hurt in school when I went there, and now apparently it's a fucking extreme sport and you need life insurance for it. It's things have changed. So whereas on the one side I do laud Charlie Hebdo for practicing a kind of freedom of speech, but there is a side of me that kind of goes, lads, like, wow, lads, wow, you're dead. Yeah. I hope the cartoons were worth it. Yeah. Do you know? And I think there's an element of it that seems that there's a shame. And this is in no way to side or to condone what happened in any way, shape or form. But we live in a world where the ideal, the word only ideal, the Platonic concept of freedom of speech is now being infringed on by the very real threat of religious fundamentalism. It seems far more common. Maybe this happened. Maybe it's just that we live in our nerfy northern European world and this shit doesn't happen. Maybe if we were growing up in Nigeria, we'd be like, Jesus, Boko Haram around the place all the time. You got to just watch what you say, mate. Don't be a fucking idiot. I think it's just this has been, I think, a sharp shock, a slap in the face, I think, to enough other people in Europe to kind of go, oh wow, they really do mean this. When they say they will kill you, they really mean they will kill you. Like, and I've always thought that Sam Harris says it quite a lot, which is the problem with liberals is they don't understand how someone can devote their life to a theosophy or a theology, and they can believe in a God in a way that makes them feel justified in doing that. Because I think all liberals in the back of their head, and I certainly used to as well, have this thing, people don't really believe. I mean, they don't really believe. And maybe they don't, but here's what we know. They act like they do. So whether they have any doubts as they're shooting the journalists, they're not going, Jesus, I wonder, does Zala really want me to do this? Is actually kind of irrelevant. Because they're shooting journalists.
I think this is one of the things actually that Sam. So I agree with you that I've jumped back and forth on this,
and
as
I
well,
don't have it
for many reasons. And one of the things...
which means we'll probably switch sides quite a lot.
Oh yes, during this, absolutely. But
we will forgive each other.
Oh, definitely. I don't... Well, I have no guns at the moment, but I don't know if you make me really angry. I think there's a water pistol downstairs. But anyway, I think what I would completely agree with what you were saying, and I know that Sam Harris has... not too long ago, I think we may have discussed this, said that look, people's thoughts and beliefs have physical ramifications.
Where are you now, Ben Affleck, you prick?
I know. So one of the things, now I wasn't thinking, well, thank goodness, look at that. But Sam Harris is great, it was right.
Yes, I'm sure that wasn't his first thing that he did was, no, I told you so.
Yeah.
I like my humble pie room temperature, please.
Room temperature, yeah. So
Ben.
I think that's obviously very important. But before this, there was plenty of evidence to suggest that was at least a valid concern. And of course, with this happening, it's just additional evidence in a horrible, horrible way, but additional evidence to support that argument that beliefs do turn into results. Yeah,
beliefs have consequences.
And I agree with you, irrespective of whether or not, in a puritanical way, at the moment that someone was one of these
are they both mind believers and body doers? Are they? Who gives a shit? They're body doers.
Yeah. And so there is a thought process or an epistemology, as one of my favourite words, that has led these people to there. Now, I certainly agree that there's probably other factors, and I completely agree that it's very, very complex. But I don't think, and this is I think maybe where I've actually come to change my mind a little bit from Sam Harris, which I'm surprised at, considering the last year. I don't think they did it for religious reasons. Yeah. Right? I think they shot the journalists for political religious reasons.
I would concur with that.
Yeah. I do not believe that they so love Allah that they went and they committed these acts. Yeah. I believe that they feel that the Western civilization is so completely the wrong thing that it is in every single one of its manifestations an abomination in their eyes. And in the same way that the World Trade Center was the perfect target because it was the bastion of capitalism, Charlie Hebdo was the kind of the magnetic true north of the decadence of European culture versus Islamist kind of philosophy. So I think it's a symbolic act in the way that the Trade Center was a symbolic act as well. And I think if we do not see it in all of those forms at the same time, if we don't see it as like a mixing board of like a kind of a recipe, a kind of ingredients, all of these things led to the final action, and to take one of them out and say this is the lead one, I think is wrong. What I think is that if you take religion out of what those people did, you would still have a political act. Maybe they wouldn't have chosen Charlie Hebdo. Maybe they would have chosen The Keep or some other French publication. Fucking Playboy. Who knows? Right? French Vogue. Okay?
And I think you meant Le Playboy there, of course.
Le Playboy. Le Play Garçon.
Le Play Garçon.
You know?
Apologies to all of our French listeners.
Absolutely. If there are any of you. I think I think you can take religion out and you will still be left with a violent act against the culture.
Certainly.
But I think to ignore the religious element is also a problem.
Yeah, and certainly I would agree with you there. When watching Sam Harris's interview, Cenk Uyghur's talk, it was fantastic, and there were definitely many things that I disagreed with Cenk on.
Yeah, me too.
I think he certainly did a lot better in that than he was doing in previous discussions about Sam Harris when Sam Harris wasn't involved. But and I really applaud him for doing a 3 hour that was just brilliant. He didn't have to do that, and he chose to do that. So I give him complete kudos for that. But definitely there were some things that that Cenk was saying there that I wouldn't have agreed with. But having said that, there were some things that in relation to what Sam Harris was saying, which is what you just said there, that just to take one element, while I agree with Sam Harris that the faith-based element cannot be ignored, in fact shouldn't be ignored, I do agree just to isolate that one is not sufficient either.
Absolutely.
But I do think he's right that because thoughts and beliefs have actual physical consequence in the real physical world, that the kind of liberal mindset of people don't really think that is a non-argument, and it's not acceptable.
Well, actually, why don't we run? Because actually, this could be kind of helpful. This is going to sound like we set up to do this. We absolutely haven't set up to do this. But how about this for an idea? Because how about we play devil's advocate to each other?
All right.
Okay. So how about we deliberately choose a contrarian thing? Because I'm going to advocate.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to advocate that actually it is the foreign policy of Europe that actually is more to blame for the deaths of those journalists than actually Islam. Okay, I'm going to argue for... So, do you feel comfortable enough having a go at that?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Do you want to have a go?
Yeah, sure.
Because I keep... And this is, like, you know, folks, all 9 of you, we should really know their names.
Oh, we should, yeah.
You know, if you can send us in your names, we'll make little cards and then we'll address you as we're kind of doing this.
Absolutely.
Like, over the last year, I've come across the Zeitgeist movement, I've come across Adam Curtis, you know, so I've kind of had that whole, like, awakening type of thing and stuff. And especially reading about the economic hitmen, and especially reading about from Mossadegh onwards. And if I'm thinking of a similar situation, I'm thinking of Ireland, right? And I'm thinking that to call the IRA a religious organisation was to fundamentally miss the point of what was going on in the North. Now, the North happened to be a tribal thing, one side versus another side. Let's just separate those sides by 8, 9, 10,000 miles, but one of them's got aircraft carriers and it can basically be anywhere that it needs to be. And let's give the other side a shitload of oil. And let's just watch 50 years of what the people in those oil-bearing countries, oil, lithium, heroin, Afghanistan and the Middle East, okay, which are now the 3 most valuable substances on the planet, as we now know. And they're where the American war machine has as most of its resources deployed at this stage. And I want to have a word about like what we mean by America. Because I think that's another thing. America has now become in action what it was never meant to by ideology. And I think what you have... we'll get on to that. Okay. So I think after 50 years of basically foreign imperialism, if you buy into the basic concept that violence is the language of the ignored... And I can kind of see the terrorist perspective. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I can understand how. If you're... And like these lads are from Algeria, right? They're from Algerian descent, right? In the last 15 years, France has killed somewhere in the region of 1 million Algerians.
Right, I had no idea it was that.
Or maybe
big
it's 25 years, something like that. But like, Algiers was one of their colonies. Like that's not like, oh hello, would you like some foie gras? Why don't you hand me over your beautiful Moroccan tiles? It's not a cultural exchange. It's a fucking occupation. And you occupy with military, and you make sure that you stay occupying by the use of force. Now here's a thought experiment. And let's use Afghanistan as an example, okay? And let's widen this from the Charlie Hebdo thing. 2 weeks ago, a wedding in Afghanistan was mortared by mistake, because that makes a big difference. By mistake, by the local police with arms that were supplied from the West. Okay? They thought it was a Taliban stronghold, but instead they killed 25 innocent people. It was a wedding party waiting for the bride to arrive. 25 people are dead from 2 families. Now, there's an American comedian, a guy called Duncan Trussell, and he said this, and I'm going to paraphrase him. And he's like, I'm not sure I'm going to feel good about that in 10 years' time. I'm not sure if I'm one of those people who watched members of their family disintegrate from hellfire missiles fired by a flying killer robot by a dude sitting in a trailer in Las Vegas. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to say, wow, fuck it, sorry, that was a mistake. Of course they were going for the Taliban, and I should just chalk the deaths of all of those 25 people, half of whom are probably from my family, so I probably loved them. I've probably, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, uncles. I should just go, well, look, in the grander scheme of things, sure, aren't we keeping the Taliban at bay? Aren't we keeping the Taliban at bay? But no, fucking 24 people in my family are dead. Yeah, fucking right, I'm going to strap on some dynamite and blow something up. Damn fucking right I'm going to do that. Because how do I get back? How do I get back at something that is so huge and faceless and everywhere and seemingly corrupt? How do I right this wrong? So in that respect, I think what has happened, my opinion of what has happened is that, and I started thinking about this as well, the very word Islam means to submit.
Yeah.
And I've said this before. If you were to create a philosophy from thin air that was the opposite of free market capitalism, it is Islamism.
Yeah, yeah.
It is absolutely Islamism, which is not about the individual. It is about a strict, rigid hierarchy. It is not about equality. Yeah. It is about you cannot be anything you want to be. You will be what the Lord has put you here to do, and you will obey those rules. It is the absolute mirror image of our entire culture.
Yeah.
And I can imagine, because of what our culture, and we are as complicit in this as anybody else in the West has been doing for the last 50 years, at least.
Yeah.
In the Middle East and in other kind of hotspots kind of around the world, that started off as an ideological campaign against communism and has now just turned into fucking a war for resources. Let's call it what it is now.
Yeah.
Right? Let's call it what it is. You know? So I can understand faced with that. I can understand how when, you know, something gets blown up and stuff like this, it acts like Bloody Sunday did up in Derry, and it became a recruitment for the group who are anti that.
Yeah.
And I think Islamism has grown out of the one thing that all of those countries shared in common was that they all happen to be predominantly Muslim. And I think after maybe 10 years of imperialist rule, you might go, hang on a sec, lads. All of us who keep on getting oppressed, well, we all show up to this place on a Friday and we all follow these rules on a Friday. So how about that's our team?
Yeah.
And the others are not our team. Now, within that team, within that group of people who are the oppressed mass, 1% of them are going to be psychopaths, because 1% of the population are psychopaths
anyway.
In the same way that 1% of the occupying army are psychopaths, possibly higher, because they try to screen for psychopathy in the army. Very important trait.
Yes.
Not to give a shit about killing people. Very important in the army. Good for career prospects. So naturally you're going to have people in the undergroup, in the oppressed group, who are going to be more prone towards violence. You mix that with some people who are going to be politically savvy and maybe a little bit eloquent, and all of a sudden you've equipped psychopaths in a way to kind of become an activity that balances back the scales. Because no, you cannot say that the death of 12 journalists can anyway be justified, but neither can you say blowing up a fucking wedding somewhere is either.
No.
But you've got to admit that there's a link between one act and the other act.
Yeah.
There is a causation. I'm surprised it's taken Islamism actually until realistically the late 90s to do this, because we've been standing on these countries' necks for at least 40 years.
I agree with you that unfortunately the number of factors involved are very, very complex.
Yeah.
Now, in general, the problem with these kind of arguments. Well, I know we're not arguing here. You're putting forth this position, and I would agree that position is completely realistic.
Yeah.
It's a realistic model of what's likely to be happening.
Yes. Yeah. Realistic. Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
I think the problem with the responses to that or those that are maybe in favour of highlighting. The problem with all of this is when these discussions are had, generally they're had within a political context in and of themselves.
Yeah.
Rather than historians may also have, like in many decades later, they may have them, but they wouldn't be having them within necessarily the political context in which the things occur.
In real time.
Yeah, so it's a little bit easier for them to almost look at it, I would say, not objectively, but a little more objectively than it is for us to do so today. So the problem is today, and this kind of response that I think I would argue that Sam Harris would probably argue against is the answer to we don't know what happened before the Big Bang is not automatically the Christian God.
Absolutely.
And that's the problem that Christians would, that's the kind of response Christians would have when we say, well, we don't know.
Yeah.
And the problem with, it's very complex, there are a lot of factors involved, and certainly economics and resource wars and whatever else have played a part, then the incorrect response is, well, therefore religion had nothing to do with it, or therefore could possibly be belief-based. I do accept that. I completely accept that, and which is why I wouldn't agree all the way with Sam's point of that it must be religion or exclusively, or that even predominantly. I would say, in fact, that I think it is predominantly faith-based, and by faith-based I mean there's a number of different faiths here. I don't mean religious faith necessarily. There's political faith, there's economic faith, ideological faith. on all sides from multiple currents. So yes, I agree. It's definitely complex, and there's an interplay there.
Yeah.
But I would actually still argue that that actually faith-based thinking is probably still the predominant factor in all of the decisions made by all of the combatants or participants or counter agents. As in, we have faith that our nation should survive, or we have faith that our ideology is correct, or we have faith that it's right to exploit these resources or whatever, or that our economic system is valid or viable or sustainable or fair or whatever. I would argue that they're all faith-based positions in and of themselves anyway. And so in fact, I would still, rather than argue that it's religious, I would argue that it's still faith-based. And that is the predominant factor, but it's not Islam, or it's not just the faith of Islam. There's many others.
In a weird way, this tragedy has actually made me, has actually made me kind of gone, these guys are really seriously hurt. Like, these guys are really, like, no sane person does what those two lads did in Paris. Like, these are evil motherfuckers. Like, make no doubt about it. Right? They are evil, evil, evil motherfuckers. But that doesn't stop. Like, look at what they did.
Well, I think it is important to ask the question, why? And in fact, sorry, not even why, because I agree with Professor Lawrence Krauss on this. When people say why, they usually mean how. How is it we've come to this point? So, I'm sorry, when he's talking about in his book in relation to the universe, why is there something from nothing? In the first page, he's actually saying, we don't mean why, we mean how is it we've come to here? Could we have possibly come from nothing? And that's a particularly interesting book, and I definitely recommend people to read it. But when these things happen, and people have their immediate reactions, myself included. I'm certainly not immune from that, but I try to get over my immediate reaction. And then when other people they might put forward their various different spins or bends on this, I ask them the question, and I'm genuinely asking because I actually don't know myself, but I ask the question, how is it that a person, or that these two people could have done this? What are the factors involved that have led up to this? And so many people, when I ask these questions, when asked this question, would immediately dismiss it. But I always pull them back and tell them, no, I want to have a serious conversation about it. Let's think about what would be involved in order to get anyone to get to this point. What are the kind of things that would influence you? And we talk about this for 5 or 10 minutes, and immediately you realise that it is very, very, very complex. And far more complex than either the simplistic answer that it must be Islamic fundamentalism, or even that it must be Western imperialism.
Literally, because I think when people say Islamic fundamentalism, I think what they're imagining is a kind of like an all-encompassing mindset that, like, when you're Islamic fundamentalist, you don't laugh and you don't joke and you don't wipe your ass and you don't have tea. It's like you're just an Islamic fundamentalist 24 hours a day. I'm up fighting for a jihad in you and a jihad in you and stuff like that.
Absolutely, I completely.
I can't do that on Fatwan until 11 o'clock and then a jihad until lunchtime. I mean, and that is like.
Which is also a demonization of either people or ideas or whatever, which is also in and of itself.
And it saves
at least not honest.
And
anyway.
It saves you having to engage with them.
Yes, and I think that's very, very important, that engagement, because again, many people misinterpret that engagement as wanting to allow people off the hook, and certainly people in the past have attempted to use this kind of process to try and get people out of jail time or out of whatever, give them an excuse or way out. And again, as you have said, I do not condone this. I would never condone it. I do not excuse it. I would never excuse it. But nor would I excuse the mistake of accidentally blowing up 25 of your relatives with a drone. But
actually, in that case, there were mortars. But we know that there have been weddings. No, but even I said drones. But we know that there have been weddings and schools blown up.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Oops, sorry.
Didn't
see all those innocent children there.
And again, because there's a lack of questioning on those sides too, in relation to, well, why are we even getting to this point where we're even thinking about firing these things? Never mind actually firing them and making mistakes and doing all of this.
Here's it. Like, I know, and I'd love. Because sometimes, like, problems are too big, I can't figure out the answer for myself. But I wish Christopher Hitchens was alive, right? Because I want to ask Christopher Hitchens now. Now with 600,000 Iraqis dead
Yeah.
as a result of the second war,
Yeah.
was it worth it?
Yeah.
Would it have been? Because and I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how fucking. But like, put it this way, I know like you hear shit about Uday and Qusay Hussein,
Yeah.
and you kind of go like, how are we feeding people to dogs and stuff? Like just.
Just horrific.
But I wonder if that stuff's still going on there anyway.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Do you know what I do have? Obviously, it's only my own opinion. I don't have really very
We're
much
supposed to be talking about blasphemy tonight.
We are.
We'll
And
get back to
we're
that.
going to definitely, because there's some very
Very
specific
important.
Irish things that
Very
I want to talk in relation to this. But maybe I'll finish off my point, and if you want to, if you come in on this, I agree with Gene Roddenberry. I absolutely agree with Gene Roddenberry, and I certainly hope if we get to a point where we have created Roddenberry's meritocracy,
Yes.
this is something that will be implemented. I think because these things are so complex, and because we cannot possibly know the extent of the consequences of any action that we may take with other cultures that just don't want us there or don't want us involved, that absolutist may be a bit strong, but he invoked an absolutist policy of non-interference when he was describing Star Trek. And non-interference in our case not only means not going over and not bombing, it means not trading, not talking, not discussing.
Isolation.
Let them do what they want to do. If they need, the only time you break that is if they ask for our help in a humanitarian disaster. But if they want anything else from us, not until you're a democracy, not until you've passed all these. You don't get near us until you're here.
You must be this cool to play with this.
Yeah. Right. But we will also not interfere. Yeah. And I think, in many episodes of Star Trek, The Next Generation, they talked about the consequences of this is the weak have been subdued or destroyed, entire civilizations have fallen, whatever. But the only thing that humanity could say at that point was it wasn't humanity's fault, it wasn't humanity's decisions to do this. These things would have happened without humanity's involvement, and we don't know how good or bad it could have been had they been involved. And I think, I personally think that is the right policy for a democracy to take. The problem is we've gone beyond that at this point. We'd have to work our way back towards that kind of policy. I've no doubt that people would suffer under that, but I don't know if they would suffer more under it. I know if we did that, we could certainly walk away and say, look, we did not cause this, we did not involve. But as I said, that has to be a complete policy. It's why he was he would always talk about that in a very, very stringent way. And it's not, I will trade with you but not get involved, which is what happens. And so now, when we do trade with people, we are supporting the governments or dictators that then suppress the people, which adds to
this is sickening hypocrisy about kind of the eulogies for this dude from Saudi Arabia.
Yes. Oh yeah.
This man is a war criminal.
Yeah.
But by our definition of war crimes, are crimes. He's guilty of crimes against humanity.
So this is a perfect case, a perfect example. If it were me and I had the support, of course, of the people of Ireland, which probably wouldn't, but
one day,
maybe
not their support.
Their
obedience.
No, their obedience.
My Legion of Terror.
We should let this bit out.
My rational Legion of Terror.
Rational Legion of Terror. Yes, it's so frightening. It's entirely rational.
We'll be oppressing you using the scientific method.
Absolutely. I wouldn't have an embassy in Saudi Arabia. I wouldn't be interacting with Saudi Arabia, and I just wouldn't be saying anything about it. It'd be done and dusted. If papers wanted to comment on whatever they want to comment, but at least there wouldn't be hypocrisy from our leadership or from our executive roles. The rest of the world doesn't play by that game, and we, to a certain extent, we can't either.
No.
And as a result, Saudi Arabia has oil. The rest of the world wants oil, or at least has access to funds that Saudi Arabia can provide, and Ireland is playing the same game by the same rules.
Yes.
And I can understand why that's done, but I also understand that there's very serious consequence to that, and I agree with you. We are as complicit in this as those who have the weapons or are actually putting their boot on the necks of some of these places.
Yeah, I mean,
But anyway, yeah. I think that's my answer.
Yeah.
My solution. It's a crappy solution, but it does bring us out of it. It's just. You're a democracy. If you want to interact with us, no problem. You're a democracy. You abide by this charter, and we're grand. If you're in serious trouble and you ask for help, we're there. Not a problem. In all other cases, you are not in our field of vision.
Yeah.
We will not deal with you.
Yeah.
And I think the world. I don't know if it would be a better place if that were done, but
It'd be a better place for us. It's going to be. This is the issue.
I don't think you'd have I don't think you're going to have those guys coming over in 10 years' time, strapping Semtex to themselves and blowing up in a cafe outside of Paris or Dublin or London or wherever.
Exactly. Like, I think the reality is this, right? Peak oil is coming somewhere around 2050, right? We're just going to run out of oil. Like, it's just done. It's like there's only a finite amount of it then. Within 20 to 30 years of that, the Middle East is going to be a desert.
Yeah.
Because once the oil runs out, it's like the Middle East has been the problem child on this planet for so long. But it's the problem child that's got all the fucking oil.
Yeah.
Right? People's patience are going to... Oh, yeah, exactly. Like, oh, your folks have gone home now.
Yeah.
Now I'm here.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, it's just going to be like, let them do whatever they want. I mean, I think that's and the problem is, though, is that after we will have destroyed...
Yeah.
Like and why I say, and this, sorry, the point I want to make about America is this. When I talk about America, I'm not talking about the Declaration of Independence. Pursuit of life, liberty and happiness and stuff like that, which is beautiful. I'm not talking about the 300 million everyday average Americans.
Yeah.
When I mention America in these contexts, what I mean is the corrupt government that receives money from corporations that then votes in laws that enables those corporations to wage wars so that they can sell products, so that they can make more profits, so that they can buy the government, so blah, 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 and on and on and on.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the American empire, it's the Bush empire. It's like the Bushes rule the world. That's it. They're the king of the world.
Yeah.
It just is. It just is.
This is, unfortunately... As I said, there are so many factors involved in this, and this is a very prominent one. And it's one of the problems I have. I know we've talked about it a little bit before, but it's one of the problems I have in relation to market democracy is that I one of these phrases that I've come up with recently is market democracy is locally simple but globally complex. Because the more variables you add into the picture, the more vested interests that get involved. And I don't necessarily even mean vested interests in always a negative term. There are people whose vested interest is just to live or to have food or to whatever. But the problem is when pitting these things against each other and multiplying that by 7.5 billion is not a recipe for efficient, effective, or peaceful coexistence. There's a problem. There's just a mathematical problem with this. You take everything else out. Just mathematically, this is chaotic in the true sense of or in the mathematical sense of the word chaotic. And that's why the system is actually unpredictable. It's why it's uncontrollable. It's because there are just too many variables. And add fuel to the fire, if the whole point of the system is to encourage people to maximize their particular segment of it, then of course you're going to get corporations who are encouraging. Well, because if laws are the blockers for corporations from doing these things, then they're going to get involved in the lawmaking system, and you're going to have to strive. But anyway. There's not a lot in that, but
I think we can expect more of this because the reality is that Western civilization isn't going to pull out of the Middle East. They're going to continue in our name to do the horrific things they're doing. It's going to get worse. As the oil runs down, it is going to get worse. And so there's going to be more human rights atrocities committed in our culture's name. And from the point of view of the person who is experiencing the atrocity on the receiving end of it, Ireland, France, America, who gives a shit? It's all the same. It's all the same. They don't give a crap about it because they don't see a crap because we're not dealing with the different countries differently. Why should they deal with us differently? So I think actually the reality of this, and this brings us into the freedom of speech and blasphemy thing, because I think the world has vastly changed because of this. And or at least I'm suddenly aware of it. Maybe everyone has been up until now. It's not going to change. This is going to get worse. And I can imagine people who are in any group, there's in marketing, from marketing you learn about things. For any proposition, there's three possible mind mind states.
Right.
Accept the proposition, reject the proposition, be a potential advocate of the proposition.
Mm-hmm.
To someone who is a potential fundamentalist, to someone who is maybe thinking, I don't like what's going on, and I see the fact that I keep on getting picked on and victimized because I'm being treated like a criminal. Why don't I just go hang out with the people who are actually the criminals? Do you know what I mean? It's like I'm damned if I do anyway. I look the right way. I've got a beard. You know, I'm the wrong skin color in the wrong place. I'm just getting the shitty end of the stick all the time. I'm sick and tired of being nice and reasonable about this stuff when I see the other side of it, and I only ever hear one side of it. To someone who's a potential, I can see something like Paris not acting as a deterrent, but in fact acting as
final straw
as
to go
kind of,
in the opposite direction,
figuring in the same way that the 1916 Rising did. In terms of the history of Ireland. 1916 Rising was an unbelievably unpopular event. From the people on the street, right up until the point where they shot them. And then all of a sudden it was like, now hang on a sec, like, just can't be doing that. So I'm sure that for vast numbers of people that we never get to hear about, but who all live in a very similar place in the world, the events in Paris are viewed with a completely different or inverse emotional graph.
To
how we see it.
I think so too. I think so too. I think that's definitely the case. But so we should definitely have a chat then about
because then that raises because if you say the activity that we agree on so our basic thesis is this: yes, religion is playing a part in this, but it is not the primary part in this. It may be the primary part at the end, like in a kind of a relay race. It's the last leg. It's the thing that gets you happy about what you have to do. And if Islam is good at one thing, it paints the afterlife. The Christian Bible does not paint the afterlife any great thing. You're sitting around talking about it. Read the Quran. Read how the afterlife is described. I want to go to that paradise. Like, it sounds like you're basically R. Kelly for eternity. You know, you've got 72 chicks, and they're see-through, and they're perfect. I mean, it sounds kind of dull, I'll be honest. Like, you know, but it does sound. It sounds like the sex fantasy of a 12-year-old. So I can imagine.
Okay, I was going to say something there in relation to that would speak to something of the author, but I'd say that would speak to something perhaps of the mind of the author of the book.
Exactly.
But
so I can understand how religion can play. It might play the role of lubricant. Okay. It might be the thing that just makes it easier. To go to the very end of this. I certainly, as I said, I would agree with that, and I would think my own thesis beyond this is that faith plays a very important role in it. But I would also and so personally, I'm actually uninterested with picking apart the different faith components of this, because I understand that, you know, rather than spending an eternity trying to, just as with the market democracy system, there are so many variables, it's just too complex to solve that equation. However, if you just stop actually thinking of it as this massive arithmetic mess and turn it into algebra, you can very quickly see, you know, cancel out all the x's, and now it's less of a problem. Sorry, for any mathematician out there, I apologise for that terrible analogy that I know is mathematically incoherent. Sounded really plausible to me.
But I'm already hearing my own voice of going, wait a minute, you can't cancel. Where are you cancelling out all the x's? Where it's not in the equation. So anyway, I apologise.
We're doing biblical math.
Biblical math,
The Lord taketh away.
The Lord giveth.
The Lord does not need to move across the equal sign
and does not carry the 4.
Exactly.
Yes, I completely agree. Biblical math.
The Lord made the long division just go away.
Yes, a mathematician, make the remainder disappear.
I like it.
I like it. One of the things that I was listening to so I haven't been listening to Irish radio or television. I mean, I shouldn't just say Irish radio or television, radio or television for a long time. And when events like this happened, in particular, I think as many of us, certainly in the West, feel a sting of, if somebody, a friend or a family member says, quick, turn on the news, that for certainly our generation brings us immediately back to obviously 9/11 or to,
it was our
September 2001 attacks. So it was a text from somebody, I think perhaps my brother, and I turned on the news and on, I think it was the Tuesday or the Wednesday. And so from then for about a week and a half, I actually was listening to the news regularly and watching TV and whatever else, which I haven't done in a long time. Yeah. But and there's certain pluses to this in that I had been missing out, I suppose, a perspective. It's not a perspective I agree with, but a perspective from the various different media organisations obviously at that point what was going on. But I noticed a number of common elements, and these are the elements why I switched off the radio and television shows. And some of these elements are the ones I want to talk about today, because I think they are important, they are relevant, they're relevant to us. They're the kind of things that atheists and freethinkers talk about quite frequently. I would say, in particular, it's something that Atheist Ireland, as an advocacy group, has been talking about for a long time in relation to the blasphemy law. So a number of people were talking about freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and there was a lot of confusion and a lot of noise out there. And I'm going to try and focus just in on Ireland for the moment, because there is a particular situation in Ireland in relation to these kind of things. And I have to say, you were talking about going back and forth a little bit on this, and I certainly had that for all the many for the similar reasons I think that you did. But one of the ones that I was going a bit back and forth on in particular, as I think many people may have been, was actually on freedom of speech, freedom of expression, incitement to hatred, incitement to violence, all of these things. Because up until that point, I would have said I absolutely knew what my mind was. Yeah. And I think now I have a clearer idea. Even though why I would have said to you my mind was clear on it, I actually don't think it was. Yeah. I think this is one of those last remaining, maybe one of a few remaining bastions that I hadn't applied my free thinking to all the way. Okay. And after Charlie Hebdo, I decided to do that. Now, this process for me started actually with Pantygate. Last year,
which is nearly a year
2014, ago. Yes, almost a year ago, isn't it? Yeah,
it was January, wasn't
it? Yeah, I think it was January, late January or early February, that's right. And I didn't see the whole kerfuffle that caused this particular, if anyone's wondering what we're talking about, this is in relation to the story of Panty Bliss it was an RTE entertainment programme.
It was a Saturday night chat show, and I don't know the name of the guy who created Panty Bliss.
Yeah, Rory.
Yeah, I think it's Rory.
Yeah. I should know, but yeah.
So Rory was on, not as Panty.
No, so Rory was on as Rory.
Speaking himself as himself, and he and as a casual aside, he made reference to what he felt was the homophobic opinions of certain journalists and a certain organisation that had been given airtime by our national broadcaster. Right. And one of those journalists and that organisation decided that this was defamation, and they took legal action against our national broadcaster. And our national broadcaster thought, rather than saying, go fuck yourselves, it actually went, here, have 80 grand's worth of taxpayers' money.
Right. So this...
Apparently they were given legal advice that they were going to lose. I think they should have fought it. I think most people felt they should have fought it, because I actually think, and this is the problem with it, is this... Actually, maybe they did the right thing, because what happened is they publicised the whole thing, so everybody got to see what happened. Right. And actually, I think actually at the end of the day, I think really the negative outcome has really been for that organisation, that journalist. I think the long term.
Most certainly.
He's no longer working, as far as I'm aware, and that organisation, they must be just looking at the opinion polls and the referendum that's coming up and going,
Yeah.
Lord, why hast thou forsaken us?
I think you're probably right. I think certainly politically, that's probably the direction which that has gone. And I'm
not sure if that was snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, or if that was a cunning ploy, or what it was.
I wouldn't use. I would use the words cunning and baldric as I would with cunning and RTE. I suspect it was a happy coincidence.
Yes.
Even probably for those in RT who probably would have agreed that they would rather have fought it but decided not to. So,
it's a civil servant's decision. That's what it is.
Yeah. So, and I think, in fact, probably even an accounting decision will lose less money this way.
That was exactly what they were told. It was like, you will lose this. It will cost north of £200,000.
So let's lose.
So let's spend 80 grand.
Yeah.
So apparently that's how much principles cost. That's what 30 pieces of silver are nowadays. 30 pieces of silver is 80,000 euros.
Yeah. So that's not bad inflation rate.
That's not a bad inflation.
over 2 millennia.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I have been thinking about this ever since it happened, and then of course I know there was Panty's heroic goal or something. I think, and I did see that, and I was moved to it. I did not agree with it at all, but I did see it, and I thought it was brilliant, and I'm delighted.
I think it's a part of the story that we need to hear.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't know, and I'm really glad. Yeah. I'm really glad. Panty, she actually articulated it and articulated brilliantly. I'm delighted it went viral, and I think it is something that needed to happen after that whole incident. But I don't agree with the sentiment at all.
What sentiment?
The sentiment that everyone is naturally homophobic, because how could they? Because of the culture. And I'll tell you why.
Now, okay, and this is right now. Yeah. So let me ask you one question.
Sure.
I think right, because, and again, I think actually this goes back to the terrorist kind of thing as well, which is homophobic in thought, homophobic in action.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, and I think
you're beginning to hit the very point that I actually wanted to bring up.
In that case, then don't let me interrupt anymore.
So when the Charlie Hebdo thing came, I was now at a point, or I was at the point where I was kind of going, I absolutely think people are entitled to be able to speak their mind.
Absolutely.
And be offensive. I completely agree with that you have no right to not be offended. So I have absolutely no problem with that.
Offence is nothing. You can't measure it.
Yeah.
It doesn't cause any medical damage.
Absolutely. So
I'm shocked.
Yeah, I'm shocked.
With electricity. Yeah. No, my sensibilities. Get out of the ear then.
Absolutely. Brilliant. I like that. That's great. I'll try to remember that. Yeah. So then somebody was saying, well, had Charlie Hebdo put in a whole bunch of anti-Semitic comments or cartoons, would that have been a problem? And I had to stop and think about it for a second, and for a moment, because I actually realised that my initial reaction was, that's not acceptable. And then I was kind of going, no, hang on a second. If I actually really think that there should be no bounds in relation to, I don't mean there aren't decency bounds, and I don't mean people can't be assholes about it. Of course they can, and I certainly doesn't mean that I agree with content.
Yeah.
But do I agree with any content being allowed, or at least something say something stereotypical about someone of Jewish descent or whatever? And I had to stop and think about all of this. And then I said, well, what if it was homophobic?
Yeah.
And what if it was misogynistic? What if it was racist? What if it was about black people or white
Queers,
people?
Jews, and Arabs. Exactly.
And then I, of course, got to what it was homophobic. And I immediately then thought back to the Pantygate incident.
Yeah.
And so I had to stop. I had to think about this for 2 or 3 days. I've been letting this mull over my mind, and then I had a chat with a very good friend of mine just to try, because he's good at pulling these kind of things out of me and seeing, where our positions are. And like yourself and myself in these conversations, we would often change sides, not intentionally, but
during a sentence.
During a sentence. Absolutely. Flip-flopping like a politician. So here's where I got to, and I'm going to explain to you now why I would disagree with Panty's. I should say disagree with Panty's. My interpretation of what I think Panty said. Maybe I'm misinterpreting, but as a rational person, and I'd almost go as far as saying as a scientist, I'm not sure I know what it means to be a homophobe or a racist or a misogynist. As in, to me, it would seem that is an all-encompassing thing. If the definition is, if they say 5 sentences in a week that are racist, then they're a racist.
Yes.
But I know of nobody who has any kind of definitions like that. So I'm not saying that it's impossible for someone to be a racist or impossible for someone to be homophobic or whatever. But scientifically, rationally speaking, I can't accept the notion that the entirety of a person's personality must be that they're homophobic or racist or misogynistic.
You're not a 24-hour homophobe.
No, in the same way
I'm
you're not
homophobic. How I scrambled eggs.
Yeah, you're not a 24-hour Islamic fundamentalist. Thank you, as you were saying earlier on. So there is that, and now some people would say that's pedantic. I don't think so. I think that's being very thorough about it, maybe, and maybe being very, very, very strict with the language. But I think it's important, and I think if this is a standard I apply to other things, I'm going to apply to this. Yeah. So then I thought, well, okay, but that doesn't mean that people can't have homophobic ideas and racist ideas and misogynistic ideas and express them. And I was when I say can't, I mean like it's It's not impossible. And so I fully accept that it's possible for people to express homophobic ideas.
Yeah.
And then here's the next bit. I think it's very, very important that everyone has the right not only to be able to express homophobic ideas, but to be able to call those ideas out as homophobic.
Absolutely.
Now, I don't think there should be a law against calling somebody out as homophobic or racist or misogynist, although I do understand defamation of character is a potential problem. So my personal choice would be, rather than attacking individuals, because I'm sure they are assholes, but rather than attacking individuals, first of all, I would not silence them by using the word "you're a homophobe" or using the words "you're a homophobe," "you're a racist." I'd actually rather they be able to express their opinions and everyone hears them. And then I would like to dismantle the opinion.
Yes.
And I would call, and I don't think I should be afraid.
I'm sure Rory would rather he'd done that too as well.
Yeah. So this is why actually when you had said, as I said, I had only heard the thing in passing and I saw references to it. So then when you said that he was talking about the opinions being homophobic, that's actually one of the questions I was going to ask.
Yeah.
If he said the individuals were homophobic...
No,
you're not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that is very important.
My understanding was that he referenced specific
incidents. Was it?
I think he said like, he talked about articles that this journalist and these organisations, and he went, they're homophobic.
Right.
Now, this is my recollection.
It may be incorrect.
The there, THEY apostrophe could be referencing the people.
Or the art, or the collection of articles.
Or both.
Yeah. So I think... So while I wouldn't disagree with Rory at all on this, I would agree with his opinions in relation to that. I would say it is a better conversation to, and I wouldn't agree with silencing, and I wouldn't say that we should never call things out as homophobic or racist or anti-Semitic or whatever, but or anti-Muslim, and we'll get to anti-Islam in a few minutes, but I think it's better to talk about ideas than people. First of all, because I think we should try to start separate. Certainly, as free thinkers, we're aware that there's a difference between people and ideas.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that most believers and people with ideas think that there isn't, that when you attack the ideas, you attack them, we know that that is not the case.
Yes.
So I think we should act like that and make sure that if we are having these conversations, that we decide if someone, even if they are homophobe or racist or whatever it is, irrelevant. They have the right to speak, let them speak. Let's talk about the ideas, let's attack the ideas, let's call the ideas what they are, but leave the person out of it, because, well, we're just adding to it anyway, but adding to them, their ego, so there's no need for that. So when Panty then in Panty's Noble Call, sorry, I was supposed to say heroical, Panty's Noble Call says that everyone's a little bit homophobic. I know what she in this context was trying to say, but I disagree with it because it could imply that everyone is a little bit homophobic, whereas I think it may be more accurate to say that it is possible that everyone once in a while expresses homophobic opinions.
Yes.
And I think that is true, and I think that is a better thing to say. That's a more demonstrably true thing to say.
Yeah.
I would agree maybe dramatically it isn't as effective as saying everyone's a little bit homophobic. But I'm not of course, I'm not a drama queen. Well, not tonight. But and so I think a better conversation is had when we discuss ideas rather than discussing people.
Yeah.
And one of the classic problems, or one of the classic mistakes that occurs when we don't do this, is if you're against the ideas of Islam, then you're anti-Muslim.
Yes.
And that Islamophobia, which I'm still not sure what that word means, is this problematic terminology, because if I want to make this clearly, and I'm sure you'd agree with this, if Islamophobia means that you hate the ideas of Islam as a set of ideas, or you're fearful of the ideas of Islam as a set of ideas, then I am absolutely Islamophobic.
Absolutely.
If Islamophobia means you hate the people who express these ideas or practice the ideas, then I'm absolutely not Islamophobic.
Yeah.
I think
in the way that I don't give a shit about my ma who goes to church, well, other than I love her, but I'm not scared of her, but I'm terrified of the Catholic Church.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is possible to be fearful of organisations
to hold those two opinions and not have them actually rub up against each other.
Yeah, and it's absolutely the case. It's absolutely possible to do this, and unfortunately, there is a lot of disingenuous speakers everywhere within Islam, within Christianity, within and well outside of even just religious organisations, who will deliberately misuse and abuse, and sometimes not even deliberately.
They will
sometimes
go out of their way to misinterpret. We know this. We absolutely.
So this is why then I think we should be clear when we are saying we will attack this idea and call it out as we see it, and we absolutely should and should not be afraid to do so. But leave the person out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Even if it might be justified, it just seems to be a waste of time.
It becomes an ad hominem.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we should know better and not make those attacks. So so now I'm at the point now when it gets to we're at the freedom of expression. I don't think I have a problem with. When I say I don't have a problem, I support the right of anyone to express whatever view they want, and if they want to express a homophobic view, let them. If they want to express, again, I've been looking up the word anti-Semitic. I'm not sure I know what this means. So let me say, if someone wanted to express an anti-Judaism view, I don't have a problem with it. An anti-Christian view, don't have a problem. I was going to say anti-Muslim view, I do have a problem with that. An anti-Islam view, I don't have a problem with that. But
the faith-based aspects.
Yeah, the faith-based. Well,
leave the people out of it.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
The people. But actually, what you're saying is that the ideas they subscribe to are fully open for discussion, ridicule, satire.
Absolutely. Now, if someone wants to, I
think this is where we get into an interesting thing. So in the same way that you kind of go, because and this is the in-group, out-group, and this is kind of the oppressed mass, the non-oppressed mass, and stuff like that. One of the people, minorities, will coalesce around what makes them the minority.
Yeah.
So gay people. Hang around because they're gay, right? Because like so, there's strength in numbers, so we'll all be gay together, and we'll have a big parade, and it'll be fantastic and stuff, and we will show our strength through showing our numbers, and we identify with this group. We are in this group. You are not. You are out this group. So in group and out group. And I think that's how minorities kind of. In fact, I think that's how every group organises itself. From under the Irish flag to under the rainbow flag to under the star. It doesn't matter what the bloody hell it is. And I think in that case, this is the issue. It's that whatever is that classifying criteria. The classification is it, and I think this is why it is important for us to have the free thinking hats on and try to get more people to choose to wear them, because I'm a minority in some cases and a majority in other cases, and the fact that I know I can do that means that I know that one aspect does not completely and totally define me. But so many people quite often just focus, even themselves as individuals and part of whatever group, they'll focus on that particular divide only, exactly. And then immediately it means you don't have to engage.
And I think that's the problem, which is why I definitely would say let's talk about the ideas rather than talk about the people or the people who say them or whatever, because as I said, even scientifically, I don't know what it means to say whatever about the person as a whole, but then it starts bringing home the fact that there's so much other things involved, and we're getting back to the questions of how rather than why or knee-jerk reactions or shields up reactions or whatever.
Like if you want to, and I guess this is where the fine line comes. If I want to ridicule Islam, specifically Islam or Judaism, okay, I will draw a stereotypical fundamentalist Jewish believer or a stereotypical fundamentalist Muslim believer, and in that case we would probably go Middle East. We probably wouldn't go India or further east
or northern Scandinavia.
Exactly. Yeah. We would kind of go like we're going to base it. It's Osama bin Laden, isn't it? It's the Osama bin Laden Muslim terrorist identikit. You know, it's the one you get in Aldi. Yeah. You know, it's the one that kind of does it. So if you want to represent that, you're going to do that. That's that because your idea is to cram as much meaning into the least amount of space as humanly possible. So you want to make the mind of the viewer go through the least number of jumps to get the point you want. This looks like a Muslim. I'm having a pop at Islam. Right, we get you. We're in the way. Yeah. But really, what you're doing is you're using a racial stereotype.
Yes. Yeah. And so this is a problem. This now where it comes to freedom of expression and relative and criticizing ideas, and then decency and taste. Mm-hmm. So I had to ask myself, do I have a problem with that? Yeah. Do I have a problem with, and I'm going to use these, I do not condone these, but I'm going to use these stereotype characteristics just as examples. Somebody with a big nose to represent Jewish, or somebody with a big chubby face or something to represent somebody black, or somebody falling over with a bottle in their hand to represent somebody Irish. Yeah. And so I had to ask myself these questions: how do I feel about, or not how do I feel about it, but where does this fit in my value set in relation to freedom of expression? And I think I have an answer, and I'd love to hear if you agree or you disagree, or whatever. I think my answer at the moment is, while I absolutely don't like it, while I actually absolutely don't condone it, or I absolutely wouldn't buy any publication that did these kind of things, I do stand by the right to do this, so long as it's not inciting to violence, irrespective of whether it's inciting to stereotypes. So long as it's not inciting to violence, I don't think I have a problem with it legally. I absolutely have a problem with it as a person.
You find it abhorrent. It offends you.
Oh no, it does offend me, but
I just don't think I just kind of go, right, I'll get over it.
Yeah, but I'll get over it. So,
and if I'm really offended, I'll do something about it.
Not presumably with a gun. No. But I wouldn't. But I tell you what, I wouldn't try to necessarily silence them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there was an interesting.
We'll just drive it underground.
Yeah.
Here's the point.
So I just wondered, what do you think about that? Do you agree? Do you disagree?
I completely agree. I completely agree, and I completely agree. Yeah. And I think would the difference be this? Minority A. Let's say we have a magazine, and on the cover of it you have Minority A are a bunch of backward Egypts, gobshites, right? And we don't like them, right? As a cover, versus a picture of like a tree line, a tree-lined avenue with people hanging from them, and it's quite obviously the minority because he's racist going, my vision of heaven. You know, it's like, ooh, that's not good, is it?
No.
And I think isn't this it? It's like if you personify the, now I'm already jumping a step ahead, Michael. I'm not sure what the answer to this is, right? But if you personify the idea, that's okay. But you can't use a racial stereotype to personify the idea, because then you're actually kind of personalizing it. Yeah.
Well, now I would agree that personalizing is a bit of a problem too, because, well, especially if it's a particular person who is alive, then we're definitely going down defamation characters, and as I said, now we're not talking about ideas, we're actually talking about individuals, and there's a whole bunch of issues with that. So I think we have laws around that at the moment, and they probably are required and sufficient. I in relation to using racial stereotypes, while I disagree with it personally, and it personally offends me, I'm not sure I think we should be creating laws against it. So, and as I said, this is why initially when I was thinking about this, because I think I was reading an article by Glenn Greenwald, and I think he was referring to, well, what if this was, a black man falling out of a tree with a banana or something like that, and whatever. And I was kind of going, that's pretty horrible. And then I was thinking, and we've definitely had horrible visions of Irish people abroad, and not even that long ago in various different places. And certainly my immediate reaction then at the time was, that shouldn't be allowed, it should be banned, whatever. And I actually don't think that should be the case. I don't like it. Again, I wouldn't support it, but I actually, if you want to, well, yeah, if you really want to do that, I think you're an asshole.
Yeah.
But I actually don't think you should be stopped from doing it.
No.
And as I said, as disgusting as it could be, that's fine. So when you were saying about your two examples, I thought you were going to say something different. If someone was doing the racial stereotype, but it was, and they were making a point, but the point wasn't, and we should now kill them, or we should now round them up, or we should put them into death camps. Oops, did I say death camp? I meant happy camp.
Yeah.
Then I don't have a problem with the law allowing that to continue. If any national newspaper or whatever published it, I would never buy from that paper again. I would suggest we boycott.
I think that's I actually think that's the point, and I think so. I think so. What we have here, and this is the point. So what we have here is we have the law.
Yeah.
Let's call it the intention of the law. Yeah. And the intention of the law is like our unfilled in blueprint for how we want society to act. Because the law is a set of if they go to. Okay. And so what we want is we want a society where the law upholds as a primary right, up there with the right to life. Okay? And the right to bodily integrity and bodily sovereignty is the right to the free expression of whatever idea you hold. Under whatever circumstance. And it will be protected by the force of law. Okay? So we want that in the law books. And then it's up to people what they do with that. And that's and I think this is it. That it's like, because I think because people were like, oh, it's terrible what these terrorists did to Charlie Hebdo. Go, it is terrible, but it's completely predictable. It's
absolutely.
Like, why is anyone surprised at this?
There, I mean, we as you said, we can try to add up all the variables and go, well, this is going to be the end result of the equation. And I completely agree, and I also agree that if as I said, if someone was to throw out a racial stereotype, I expect there will be a backlash. I mean, a non-violent or whatever backlash against that, but I definitely don't think people should be arrested.
No.
I don't think they should be deliberately silenced. And
like, the great thing about UKIP getting the election over there is that they're just falling apart now in public view. Because it turns out they are a bunch of fucking loons. And that's it. It's like, let's give them just enough powers that they can't actually get anything done, but the spotlight will just make them go all a bit mental.
And then absolutely.
Exactly. And this is it, because secrets and lies require shadows. You let this shit out in the open, and it just, people can just see it for what it is.
Which is, as I said, which is why I agree that we shouldn't use words like homophobe and racist in the discussions that we want to have. I'm not saying people should be banned from doing it, but as I said, because I think legally it's dodgy territory because of defamation. But irrespective of that, if you really want to do it, I don't think you should be arrested for it. But I think when we have those conversations, exposing the horrificness of these ideas, because one of the things that just
homophobia, the great thing about this is that there's a thing in screenwriting which is show, don't tell. And maybe the problem that Rory encountered, because it was an off the cuff remark. This whole thing was it was an aside on a Saturday night chat show.
Through.
He may as well have been on Graham Norton. He was getting sued over Graham. This was ludicrous. But actually, it made the people who took the legal action look ludicrous.
Look ludicrous, and definitely, in fact, the end result actually would be that it's probably helped the cause of
hugely
marriage
because
equality.
It really was
now.
We're not on your side. Oh God, you people are like arseholes.
The ones who took the money.
I've met way
you took the 30 pieces of silver. Didn't you read your own book?
Absolutely, you unmitigated, hypocritical, no empathy having scumbags.
Absolutely. But I won't call you homophobe.
Absolutely.
So I think that's very interesting. Well, that's good that we've talked about that. The other thing I wanted to talk about in relation to this was, of course, so we do have a blasphemy law in Ireland. Now,
much to our shame.
Much to our shame, and there is a lot of shame with this. And as I was educated on, there is an impact in Ireland. It's small enough. But in fact, the impact globally is much more dangerous.
Way dangerous.
So if anyone out there is listening and may not be aware, our law has been cited by countries, I think, like Pakistan
and Afghanistan. I believe Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia as well, of course.
I believe. Now, I could be incorrect, but I believe so.
Right.
The only one I'm absolutely certain of is Pakistan, but I'm fairly sure I've seen Afghanistan and Saudi Arabia
as well. Cite our law, I think, usually in the context of UN or some global conference, to try and
It's- they're
garner
trying to-
support for blasphemy laws, both within constitutions of actual nation states, and then for that as a right to be recognised, I think,
Within
at some
the
point,
UN.
within the UN, maybe
Absolutely.
within the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
And the danger is as well is that with and again, like, not wanting to sound like a tin pot hat conspiracy, but the UN is basically just the marketing department of the American war machine, let's be honest. And when you have right-wing nut jobs over in America who also would be, well, I mean, you know, because they're the Christian fundamentalists we haven't heard about yet. But don't worry, folks, they're all out there, and they're in the country that's got the fucking drones. You know, like, you know, at some point we're all going to be getting to know the foreign policy of the American right-wing religious fundamentalists.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And they seem to be advocates of blasphemy.
Yeah. So this is a problem. This is a very serious problem. Now, America doesn't have a blasphemy law, certainly not in the books.
Yet.
Yes, of course, yes.
The only thing being is the incredible wording of the Constitution. But, I mean, you see what's happening with the erosion of the Constitution over the last decade.
Yeah.
And
Well, even in the last year, we have seen two particular cases, the Galloway versus the town of Greece in relation to prayers not being said before meetings, and now prayers can be said. But we're getting a situation now where all sorts of prayers, including the church,
Satan,
the Satanic Temple, as opposed to the Church of Satan, I think it is, have been doing, and other organisations and humanist and atheist invocations. And then the other case, the Hobby Lobby case, which the Supreme Court Justice, if I recall correctly, have said is restricted to only this thing, but there is a danger here, a slippery slope danger.
Well, I mean, the minority opinion said that she felt that this was one of the worst judgments that the Supreme Court has ever held down, because it's generally when they give a judgment like that, they leave it. They create, these are all the circumstances that must be met for this to apply. I'm sure this is an unbelievably wide-reaching and far-reaching judgment. Like, this is open to a hell of a lot of interpretation. So we may be beginning to see the increasing encroachment of religion in America in, let's say, the next 20 to 25 years. The further on figures look a little bit more positive in terms of the age demographics. The younger people now who won't be in their 40s from their 15, 20 years time, they seem to be far less religious than the current people who are in their 40s, who are about the most religious group we've seen in America in a very, very, very long time.
I think people have often cited...
But it's going to take 20 years for those people to all just become irrelevant and fuck off.
So there's still, unfortunately, a lot of uncertainty there in relation to how that will progress. So certainly Ireland, as a Western nation state, having this blasphemy provision both in the Constitution and having now enacted it in law, even though... and it has a chilling effect, as we on our show are very well aware of. But I suppose it hasn't actually been called. It hasn't been used yet. However, there was, of course, Dr. Ali Salim from I think it's the Islamic Culture Centre in Ireland.
He's one of the spokespeople.
Who was interviewed by several different news organisations, did state that the republication of the Charlie Hebdo cartoons would have been a violation. I didn't see anything where he said he himself would actually bring the case.
I saw an interview with him where he said he would be investigate. If he saw them, he would investigate legal means.
He would investigate legal means, right.
He would take legal means.
Now, I actually, just on that, I completely disagree with this, honestly. I completely disagree with being in the position where I'd want to do this, first of all, and I certainly disagree with the fact that it's a legally viable option at the moment. But having said that, be it Dr. Salim or anybody else, if they chose to do this, I won't blame them. I think it's crap that they would want to do it, but I won't blame them in the sense that the law is there and they are entitled as citizens to execute the law as it is.
Absolutely.
And the other reason why I don't want to blame them is we are the ones to blame because we've allowed this, it's still there and we haven't gotten rid of it yet. And if we want it, and one of the problems I hate, I'm sure this is not an Ireland only problem, but it's one I've always noticed since I was a young child, and I hate it today, is Irish people don't like to deal with a problem, they like to go around the problem. And I don't like that. I want us to deal with the problem. And the problem would not be, in this case, Dr. Salim or anybody else, as citizens rightly invoking the law, irrespective of how crap we think that law is. The problem is the law and the Constitution provision.
I would imagine, what happened, being someone who knows a little bit about corporate communications and stuff, and looking at the timeline of that, because it was the day of Charlie Hebdo or the day after Charlie Hebdo.
Right.
And he was on Matt Cooper and 2FM and a bunch of kind of radio stations. And I heard the same thing, I will get legal advice and stuff like this. And then you didn't hear anything.
Right.
For a few days.
Yeah.
And now another imam has come out and is now being very much anti the radical fundamentalists.
Right.
If I was to read between the lines, I would say that whoever's looking after their PR got on to them and went, look lads, you can win a war or you can win a battle. Now which do you want to win?
Yeah.
Because if you actually do, like if everybody printed them, let's not say everybody, let's give you a real easy target. Let's say the Phoenix.
Yeah.
Let's say the Phoenix reproduce all of those cartoons. Tiny little fringe magazine, but it's our satirical magazine.
Yeah.
If you take them to court, you will probably win.
Yeah.
And your life will be made unbearable.
Yeah.
You know, it's so you can do it. Like, by all means, lads, the law is there. You can absolutely do it. I'm not going to recommend that you do it.
Yeah.
Now, that would be my professional advice to them.
Which is quite possible. And I mean, that in and of itself, I'd say that...
Now, as it happened, all of our news agencies were too fucking spineless to produce anything. So we never got to find out actually what happened.
Yeah.
Which I would have liked to have seen.
Yeah, I would too. I think we in particular would, because we want to see...
And I wouldn't have minded RT having to pay out 80 grand to them.
Yeah.
To save them going to court or something like that. Like, I mean, I would actually I would applaud that and that's fair enough.
Yeah, well, they took the risk, they knew they were going to take the risk, and it was a deliberate choice.
And I think this is it. This is, I think, what it comes down to. This is just occurring to me now, Ciarán. Like, most Catholics in Ireland are milky tea Catholics.
Oh, yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they're not taking a gun out for anything.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, they'd rather...
Some of them are herbal tea.
They will, exactly. Absolutely.
I'm sorry, they're not even. They're not even drinking berries or limes.
Exactly. I mean, they can't even bring themselves to vote in abortion referendums. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's insane. You know. So I think that, like, when Dermot Ahern, for politically expedient, spineless, depraved, disgusting, unbelievably unimaginative, scumbag motherfucking reasons, enacted this blasphemy law as a plaster over whatever it was. I think it was the defamation law. It was a specific case, the defamation law, to meet a legal requirement. I think everyone, whatever, blasphemy, fair enough.
Yeah.
You know, it's Ireland, because it was 2006, 2007.
2009, I think it was.
Was it 2009?
Yeah,
okay, so 2009. It's like, grant. 2009, like the recession, the internet's getting faster, grant.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
Like, I think that was the general impression of people. I don't think people understand, because I don't think people in Ireland believe in their own God well enough to imagine that they'd ever take a blasphemy case. And anyone who did take a blasphemy case for the Roman Catholic God would be looked on as a fucking laughingstock in this country. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But that ain't Islam.
Yeah.
And that's the point. It's like, no, you don't understand. This is a whole different set of beliefs. Mm-hmm. And even the tenor of the belief, like, to be a lukewarm Muslim, it appears to be equal to a very strict Catholic.
Yeah. To say nothing of a rather stringent adherence.
Absolutely. To say nothing of a strict adherence of Islam, but to be a kind of to be a moderate Muslim. You do believe that you can't show a picture of the Prophet. Like, you believe, like, that's a huge problem. If you have that mindset. And I think this is where the issue becomes, because I think we have no frame of reference for that. Because I think people in Ireland make some form of, the lads doing the bombings and stuff like that, sure, they're like those mad crazy fuckers who go down to Knockderg and stuff like that. It's like, no. There's definitely a misunderstanding there. There seems to be a higher intensity of belief.
Which
I'm making a huge generalization here.
Yeah. I mean, as always, we can be corrected.
There seems to be more. Put it this way: there seems to be more rules in Islam.
Yeah, certainly
that would be opposite of the type of society we wish to live in a liberal democracy. Certainly we seem to come up against Islam's rules with far greater frequency than we do any other religion's rules.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. I don't want to get into a what if kind of scenario, but some people have argued. I can't argue this because I just don't have enough information or expertise. But some people have argued that, well, obviously our liberal democracy, our liberal Western kind of ethos, a generic ethos. Some have argued not that it could only have come out of Christianity, but that it definitely wouldn't have come out of, and I mentioned ideas and not people here, that it came out of Christianity, but it's highly unlikely it could have come out of Islam as a set of ideas. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if that's, again, maybe it's just too complex to actually pin it down to one idea. I mean, I certainly wouldn't say that it's because of Christianity that we have this.
If you think like democracy, the root of the word democracy is from the people. Yeah. The root of, like, Islam means submit. Yeah. So I would say, I would agree with that.
Yeah. So it
core philosophy of Islam
is actually opposed.
Not self-determinism.
Yeah. So actually, I think rather than, I'm certainly not arguing as a Christian apologist that isn't Christianity it creates a democracy. I think it's more like,
do you find that you can, like, you know, I'm an atheist, but I'm a Catholic atheist. The God I don't believe in is the Zeus God who sits up in heaven with Jesus.
No, definitely not. But I have certainly seen posts on, you know, Christianity generated this and Christianity generated that, and most of it I know is nonsense. Yeah. But when I heard, I think it was a historian or some political commentator who made this particular comment. Yeah. My understanding of what they said, now maybe this is not what they meant, but my understanding was not that Christianity was so brilliant that it evolved into a liberal democracy. It was that, exactly what you just said, it isn't as strict as, say, Islam is, and therefore it is more likely that a liberal democracy could have evolved out of that and not be completely and utterly annihilated.
If you want to look at the history of Europe, a democracy came from Greece, which predates Christianity. You know, fuck yourself, whoever.
Absolutely.
And secondly, Christianity was responsible for democracy because it made such a fucking balls of things that it took Martin Luther to kind of go, hang on a sec, we are not having any of this. And that set the Enlightenment.
I'm nailing this. Exactly. I'm nailing this.
I am, exactly. So I think in that respect, yes, but not in the way that they mean it.
No, that's no way they mean it.
They want to think of like Christianity like some sort of universal university crucible of ideas. No. You were the thing we didn't want to be.
Yeah. And so then we had this other old
Inquisition, crusade, Cathar murdering, paedophile, scumbag machine.
Yeah, I suspect that most of the Christian posts that I've seen didn't mean it like that, but I would agree with you there. So, there's maybe two other things that I just maybe like to talk about to wrap up, maybe to bring it back to the kind of free thought element of all of this. Just of course haven't talked about that enough. So when I was listening to the various different news reports, and eventually when I got to this one, this was the point where I was going, right, it's time now to switch back off and play some nice music in my head. It was about a week after the Charlie Hebdo, and someone said the next article or the next segment on whatever news program was why it's a problem for Muslims to have drawings of the Prophet Muhammad. And the conversation was about how we could accommodate this. And so once we got to this point, then I was, okay, they're already asking the wrong questions.
Absolutely.
So I couldn't continue listening to... because they were no longer now discussing it, they were actually discussing they weren't discussing the actual problem. They were discussing now how we could incorporate...
how do we take offence into account?
Yeah, how do we take offence into account? We had the issues then with Pope Francis making those terrible statements.
If anyone had said anything about my mother, I'd punch them.
Yeah.
Nice way to show it. Nice way to turn you the cheek.
And the whole... of course you can say what you want, but...
That's if I'm not too busy beating up queers.
I have to say, after that, I did listen to Pope Disco from Tim Minchin, and of course the Pope song as well.
Yes.
So I mean, these things pushed me back into we're not there yet. We have a long way to go.
We are a long way to go.
But one thing that did kind of stick with me on the night I saw it, and which I think again was the Wednesday night, and then I was trying to understand why it was sticking in my head. So I was kind of paying attention. I was kind of doing a meta-analysis thingy here. And I was kind of looking at how the news organisations were going to treat this. And to see if any of them were going to go down a diabolically, vehemently anti-Muslim, and I mean anti-Muslim route. Or were they going to go down the uber PC route?
Yes.
And I think certainly the coverage that Sky News produced seemed to actually be oddly quite relatively PC.
I didn't even watch because I'm not watching Sky News.
Well, no, I decided I would, and now there were
I don't want to know what Rupert Murdoch thinks.
Oh no, well there were so many things that were just it's like a really bad show, except it's a really bad show with people who were actually killed
dead.
involved. Yeah,
they're done.
Yeah, so it was in many cases just quite awful, but. They did this one segment, so I'm sorry, this was the day after the shooting, but it was just when the hostages had been taken and when they were about to do when the two French units...
The Friday.
So sorry, it was the Friday, wasn't it? Okay, right. So they had a segment, and in the so the segment was obviously recorded from the night before, and in between, while we were waiting for some action to happen, this segment was played. And the segment was a recording that obviously some reporter in Sky News went out to some cafe in London. Now the cafe was completely emptied. It was just 6 people sitting around the table. It was the reporter, and I think the other 6 people were all... I think they were all Muslim.
Right.
And they were Muslims of a different...
So she and Sunny?
Well, I would say... So I don't know which if they were of particular branches, if that's the right word, but say of different strengths in their devotion.
Okay. Right. Okay.
So you had women there who were dressed, shall we say, in Western style.
Yeah.
There were women there who had just scarves and maybe a particular type of dress. There was one who was almost completely covered. Now she wasn't wearing the completely
but she was wearing the hijab, the face veil.
Yeah. So you could see her face, but the scarf was completely covered.
Oh, okay, right. So she wasn't wearing a veil.
No. And then there were 3 men there, and again, one man I think looked in his full kind of.
I find that offensive. Like as a free-thinking.
Oh
Western man,
as an idea,
right?
Yes.
Because
yes,
there's my wife and there's my sisters and there's my mother.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And I find it offensive. That there is a thought that there is an ideology out there that if it was in control of this country, it would enforce a dress code.
Absolutely, and these are the kind of criticisms that we absolutely must be allowed to have. Absolutely. So I completely agree. And I said just to complete that picture, then there were 3 men. There was one in I think full what I would say again. Apologies for the lack of terminology here. The full. Gear that you'd see when going to a mosque, I think, to pray.
Gotcha,
so,
right,
and then there was 2 other gentlemen, and they were both in suits.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So obviously, clearly, it was picked like this, and that's fine. And basically, the point of this segment was to give the varying opinions of Muslims.
Yes.
And of course, the problem is Muslim and Islam was being used interchangeably throughout this, which is really, really bad. Anyway.
Dangerous.
But one of the things, one of the women said. Now, I don't think it was the one who was completely covered, but the one she was partially covered.
Yeah.
Now, not that would have that much of a bearing at all, but this particular woman was saying she was having a discussion with one of the men, and they were both kind of agreeing with each other. She was basically saying the guys who shot up Charlie Hebdo, they are not Muslim. They are not Muslim. They do not represent. In fact, she was saying they are not Muslim, and then she was saying they were not Islam, which is part of the problem. The language is incorrect there. But anyway, her point was these people did not represent Islam, and they weren't Muslims. That was her point. And anyway, this
not in their mind they weren't. Yeah, and that's the issue.
This stuck with me for a while, and I couldn't pinpoint it. And you've identified it straight away. I was just like, hang on a second. Who are you to say what is and is not Islam? This is the very, very problem that we have
the problem
with religion.
Faith.
Yes, with faith. That
faith is like water.
There is no base premise, common base metric, or common methodology, or objective way of saying there are 44,500 plus variants of Christianity in the world today.
44,000?
44,500 plus, at least.
I love it.
There are, I was able to...
The Word of God Kind of.
Yeah. There are at least 32 variants of Islam that I could identify that the weekends then, because when I realised this was my problem was, hang on a second.
Who speaks?
How on earth could she say what is and is not Islam? So this, of course, is the problem, and that was never once questioned.
Yeah.
And nor did I hear anyone on any radio program or on a television interview question this.
Who are you
very,
to have
very
that opinion and
point.
speak for? As we're always told, 1.6 billion Muslims.
Yeah, we can say this is the speed of light. We can say this is physics, this is chemistry, this is biology. We can say that because we actually have the base metric against which we measure everything, the universe. But you can't. This is the very nature of this is why faith-based epistemology and evidence-based epistemology are not compatible at all.
Absolutely.
And so
I like how your mind works, Kieran.
Yeah, when I heard this, then I realised that this is the common response that we get. Now the response of that one person or those two people do not represent all of Islam would have been an accurate response. Yeah. But the implication is they don't represent Islam at all. And it's like, yes,
and
they do.
That's nonsense.
Yes, they do.
In the same way that saying that the only reason they did that was Islam.
Yeah.
And saying that Islam had nothing to do with it is also wrong.
It's also wrong. In fact, it's the two extremes.
Yeah.
And they're both incorrect.
Yeah.
Most certainly they do, in their minds, they most certainly do represent Islam. And the very problem here is, as I said, with Islam, Judaism, Christianity, and any other faith-based epistemology, be it religious or not, is that it's like water, as you said. There's no way for us to grab a hold onto it, and so you can't say that this isn't or it is a representation.
Yeah. And now let us be a bit more specific. And this is more relevant to the Islamic faith than it is relevant to the Christian faith. Not so much the Judaic faith, and for what I know about Mormonism and Buddhism and the other religions. The Quran is more aggressive than any other holy book. You have to work in the Old Testament to find, like certainly within the Gospels, you have to work hard. Because the central of Jesus' message, and I don't even believe that Jesus existed, but the central philosophy of Christianity is the golden rule. I mean, it is. It is the golden rule. You add in the Beatitudes or the Sermon on the Mount, you add in the getting rid of the money changes, and you kind of end up with socialism. Let's be honest.
Yes.
Okay? Jesus was a socialist.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay? He was a socially reforming socialist.
Yeah.
You have to work very, very hard.
Yeah.
To get a let's go fuck up those guys who are pissing us off message. You don't have to work that hard in the Quran at all. No. Like, you just don't. You don't have to work that hard in the Torah because it's let's wipe out the Amalekites. Yeah. You know, it's like... So we have genocide before the New Testament. Yeah. We have genocide post the New Testament. Because we know the New Testament was written before the Quran.
Yeah.
And the Quran came later.
Yeah.
So... That is a unique problem that we have with Islam, and that is an issue of Islam. Yeah, that's it. There is no just be nice. There is no overriding. Yeah, just be nice to everybody.
Yeah.
Because my understanding is, and I haven't read the whole thing through, but I've read like a bunch of surahs and the hadith and stuff like that as well. Is that Muhammad will say really cool stuff and then go off and murder a whole bunch of people, and then say really cool stuff and go off and murder a whole bunch of people. So he's being cool and murdering people.
I'm thinking of the film Mars Attacks.
Yeah.
We come in peace and then go and
exactly.
Everybody.
So like it would be like if Jesus kind of went and then he took out his lightsaber and smote all the Pharisees, and it's like that didn't happen. That's not what. Well, actually, none of it happened.
No, but in particular, that certainly was reported to have happened.
And this is where, and I think this is where I come back onto the side of Sam Harris again, which is, given our activity abroad, our culture's activity abroad, and the ingredients in a book like the Quran, I'm surprised it's taken this long.
This long, yes.
I'm surprised. Yeah. I mean, I think those people have shown remarkable restraint.
Yes, given
the shit that has been done to them.
Yeah.
Just horrifically cynical, profit-motivated, psychopathic,
entirely
hypocritical.
Yeah.
Like, you name it. Every everything that we would despise in a culture, we've done it. We keep on doing it. We're just not doing it in Europe or America.
Anymore.
But we're doing it in South America, and we're doing it all over the rest of the world.
It's, as I said, I would come back.
And the only thing that's stopping us not doing it in Russia and China is their armies.
Yes, their armies and those big nuclear weapons.
Absolutely.
So I completely agree with you.
So this is going to continue to be a problem.
I think so, and unfortunately, as I quite often when I talk with people, when they say, if they ask me, well, what is it that you do believe or whatever, and I try to explain to them, I don't have a problem what you believe. I have a problem that you believe.
Yes.
And I think this is the fundamental premise that freethinkers and atheists rely on, and I think the only solution I'm sure I don't know, there may be many solutions, and they all have no doubt good and bad points attached to them. But I think the long-term solution is to try... I do agree. I want to see not just an end to religion, but an end to faith-based thinking. Obviously, I don't see that happening anytime soon.
No. It may never happen.
It may never happen, but I certainly think...
Until the computers take over.
Absolutely, and I, for one, will like to help our new computer overlords.
Absolutely.
I can toil for lithium and whatever else they want.
Plug into the matrix.
Absolutely. I do think that if we want to stop being hypocritical, in particular in the West, then the first thing we need to do is, rather than calling bullshit and time out on other religions, let's call it out on the ones that are predominant here.
I mean,
and so, while again, I would say I agree in principle with many of what Sam Harris had to say, I wouldn't waste time on it, because I actually think let's deal with our own house. Because I understand his concerns, and I understand all of the other things, but to be quite honest, I agree with you, as you said earlier on, if Islam wasn't a factor, then the other factors there would probably be enough still to cause harm. But I think what will help us help others is if we try to eliminate faith-based thinking here, then maybe we might be able to, first of all, put ourselves under the microscope and analyse all the crap that we're doing, and then rightfully stand up and say, look, we've dropped this Bronze Age bullshit and things seem to be a bit better for us now. Maybe you could do the same.
And I think as well, if we add in that we must be ruthlessly satirical about ourselves.
Oh yes, much about ourselves as anyone else.
And actually, let's say more so about ourselves.
Yeah.
Let us police ourselves at the level with which we believe a perfect society should be policed. Let us practice freedom of expression in a way that tries to make the people who act in our name act better. Let us leave them with no alternative but to act better. Let us bring the full spotlight of public opinion and knowledge to bear, so as that they can't continue to get away with committing fucking crimes against humanity in our names. And it's not them who get fucking shot. Like this is like the equivalent of what happened to Charlie Hebdo is kind of like this king went over and just kicked the shit out of this village. Right? And then fucked off. Right? And someone from that village came and just shot one of the king's subjects. Because the dudes who got killed, the people.
I actually think that is a very good analogy. Actually, I think that's. I mean, certainly that's.
Like I'm all on for killing the board of J.P. Morgan. Like I'm all on for killing the 1%. I am all like this world would.
Well, let's not go into the killing. Perhaps more.
I'm quite happy to kill the rich.
Okay. Well, I worked at J.P. Morgan, so now I'm a little bit worried. But no, not as a stockbroker though. It was a summer job. I was earning a measly 40 or 50,000 for that summer.
Yes.
Anyway, on that note, I think maybe we should wrap it up. But no doubt there'll be more conversation about blasphemy. About it looks like the referendum isn't going to go ahead, maybe within the lifetime of the current government. Now, which is problematic.
Expedient.
But politically expedient.
And in case anyone knows, the reason being is that the government are more than likely going to get obliterated in the next general election. But half of the government's philosophical backdrop are faith-based loons.
Yes, and so now they're beginning to not want to. Yeah, they don't want to
And they want to put
alienate.
some clear blue water in them and the godless socialists.
Especially with that evil referendum coming up in the next few months. So, but anyway, look, we'll definitely come back to this topic. Hopefully, we'll get maybe some other people in to give us their opinions, and we'll see if things get any better or any worse in the coming.
I just want to say one last thing actually as well. Like, as someone who kind of professionally expresses opinions in a public forum, this Charlie Hebdo thing has given me it's put the undeniable lens of there are now people out there who are actually prepared to kill you for no other reason than the fact that you express certain opinions. You don't even need to take certain actions. You just express certain opinions. And what we would consider to be crossing, like not even getting close to a line. You know, and the terrible thing is that Charlie Hebdo, it was shit.
Yeah.
Like, there was shit.
Yeah.
The cartoons were shit.
Okay. I have looked at quite a few of them and I was like,
it's like, this isn't searing political insight.
No, maybe I'm actually losing something in translation, but I don't actually think so. So I do agree. I wasn't overly enamored.
I mean, Viz is better.
Yeah.
Like, Viz comic is better satire. Spitting Image was better. Where's Spitting Image when you kind of need it?
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
So
Brilliant.
that's the issue as well. Is that like, and again, you get that mixed up. Is that it's like, you're defending Charlie Hebdo. No, I'm not. I'm defending their right to be Charlie Hebdo.
Yeah.
That's what I'm defending.
Yeah.
And I'm equally defending those people's rights to be Muslims and to practice whatever they want to practice and stuff. It is right up to the point they fucking shoot somebody.
Yeah. Then.
But then again, I can't blame them because probably they had terrible shit happen to them and blah 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 blah. And the food blender goes on.
Yeah, it's difficult. But as I said, I'm hopeful that solutions can be found. But I'm absolutely clear that they can't be found by pretending we believe in things.
Yes, it's not a new strain of religion, ain't the answer.
No, absolutely not. Or any kind of faith-oriented position. We need to actually start moving away from that kind of thinking and moving towards actually solving the problems that we create ourselves. So, but anyway, listen, thank you very much for listening to us, and we will be back in a month's time with the second episode of the second season.
2015?
Absolutely. Thanks very much.
See you.
What this looks like in prison, man. What's worse is that the prisoners don't know that they're prisoners. Even defend the tactics that are used to imprison them. A conquered mind, trying to conquer other minds, selling. Come out here, I'll show you what this looks like in prison, man. What's worse is that the prisoners don't